She was 7 years old when she saw dead bodies on a train. That was Partition, that was 1947, and that was when the story began. On a train out of Lahore with a family that had left everything behind. And a little girl grew up, moved cities, got married at 17 into a household that told her a woman had no business being in business. She was given a kitchen and was expected to stay in it. She did, but not in the way they imagined. With rupees 300, a backyard oven, and no one's permission, she built a brand that would go on to supply burger buns to McDonald's, export to 69 countries, and cross 1,874 crores in revenue. And in December 2020, in the middle of a pandemic,
Bectors Food
Mrs Bectors Food
IPO was subscribed 198 times,
generating 40,000 crore in bids, the highest ever for an IPO of that size at the time. Investors buying 42 years of a woman who refused to stop. Her name is Rajni Bector. Karachi, 1940. She was born into a respected, comfortable family. Her father was an accountant general and many relatives held government posts. Life was stable. Then 1947 arrived and took all of it away in a matter of weeks. The family crossed into India during the partition. Their government connections helped them get out safely, but a 7-year-old girl had already seen things that don't leave. A city she once loved became a place she could never return to. They eventually settled in Delhi, and in 1957, at the age of 17, she married Mrs Bector, a businessman from Ludhiana. Her in-laws were conservative. A woman working was not acceptable, so they gave her the kitchen. What they didn't understand was that they had just given her everything she needed. The first lesson of the story shows up right here, before she even starts a business. Starting conditions are not destiny. She had no capital, no permission, but displacement had already taught her resourcefulness. When everything is stripped away, you stop waiting for the right conditions. You work with what is in front of you. And the kitchen in front of her was about to become her lab. She didn't cook to comply, she cooked because she was brilliant at it. Her home became the most talked about dinner table in Ludhiana. Guests couldn't stop praising her food. And not just any guests. Brij Mohan Munjal of Hero Motorcorp sat at that table. The Pawas of A1 Cycles, the industrialists of one of Punjab's most powerful cities were complimenting her cooking and going home talking about it. That was unrecognized market validation. She hadn't been given the language for it yet. After her 3 sons left for boarding school, she enrolled in a bakery course at Punjab Agricultural University. She got good and then exceptional. Word spread through Ludhiana, person to person, without any advertising at all. And then, with rupees 300, she bought an oven and started making ice cream in her backyard. The orders came fast. She couldn't keep up and she was losing money. Most people would have read that as the answer. Stop, go back inside. It is never meant to be. She read it as a capacity problem, and capacity can be fixed. She went to her husband Dharamveer. He listened, and in 1978, he gave her rupees 20,000 to set up a proper ice cream manufacturing unit. Then, he told her to give it a name. She used cream in everything she made, and so she called it Cremica, made of cream. And here is the second lesson. She validated the demand before she asked for a single rupee. She built a customer base first. She created real revenue traction before asking for more capital. And even then, the rupees 20,000 came from her husband, not a venture capitalist with a fund cycle and a return target. Validate first, scale second, raise only when the demand already exists. Most people get that sequence completely backwards. At a local fun fair in the late 1970s, she set up a small ice cream stall right next to Quality, the leading national ice cream brand at the time. But her ice cream outsold Quality's at a neighborhood fair. That was the moment. From there, Cremica grew the way honest businesses grow, through word of mouth. She added bread, then biscuits. Each product earned its place the same way the first one had, through quality so consistent that people talked about it without being asked to. While this episode talks about succession planning and how legacy businesses navigate it, we have a WhatsApp community called the Personal Finance Club that talks about the nitty-gritties of personal finances and helps you solve it. Link is in the description. Go and check it out now. By the early 1980s, Cremica was a real business with real momentum. And then, 1984 arrived. The assassination of Indira Gandhi triggered some of the worst communal violence independent India had ever seen. The Bector family received death threats. There was also an attempt to abduct their eldest son, Ajay. Think about what that moment looked like. A woman trying to build a food business, a city on fire around her family under threat. No guarantee that anything would be standing when the violence ended. Yet, she kept the ovens running. This is the chapter that gets left out of the polished version of this story, and it is one of the most important ones. Because here is the third lesson. Every business with a real story has a chapter where everything nearly collapsed. The business that survived those chapters are the ones that had already built something real before the storm arrived. She had built all of that quietly in the kitchen. This is what a moat looks like before anyone can call it a moat. When the storm came, it held because she had been building it long before she needed it. Then came 1991. Liberalization changed everything. India had just opened its doors and the world was walking in. But the world needed partners. Quality certified, reliable, scalable, local supply chains that could meet international standards without flinching. In 1995, Cremica won the contract to supply burger buns to McDonald's for their India entry. And this is the fourth lesson, the most important one in the whole story. This was not luck. This was 15 years of building quality in silence. When McDonald's vetted Cremica, they weren't just testing the buns. They were testing hygiene standards, production consistency, the ability to scale without ever compromising on quality. They were asking one question: can we trust this supplier at the highest level? She had been building that answer since 1978. The contract was simply the world finally paying her for work she had already done. The McDonald's relationship didn't stop at buns. Cremica entered a joint venture with Quaker Oats to supply ketchup, mayonnaise and condiments. Another one with UK-based EBI Foods for batter and breading. Then, less than a decade later, she bought out both joint ventures entirely. She used global partnerships as a classroom. She learned everything they had to teach her, and then she bought them out. By 2006, Cremica was recording nearly 30% year-on-year growth with annual revenue of close to 100 crores. By 2011-12, annual sales reached rupees 650 crores with clients including Pizza Hut, Papa John's, Domino's, Indian Railways and Burger King. Her backyard had become a national supply chain. And that is the fifth lesson. Compounding works in business exactly the way it works in an SIP. There are no single dramatic moment that made Cremica what it became. Just the same thing, done better than anyone else, for longer than most people are willing to commit to. Time over timing, always. In 2006, Goldman Sachs invested approximately 50 crores in Cremica, valuing the business at around 500 crores. 4 years later, Motilal Oswal Private Equity bought out Goldman Sachs' stake for approximately 70 crores. But here's the lesson buried inside that transaction, and it connects directly to what happened next. While this episode talks about succession planning and how legacy businesses navigate it, we have a WhatsApp community called the Personal Finance Club that talks about the nitty-gritties of personal finances and helps you solve it. Link is in the description. Go and check it out now. When you bring in outside capital, you accept somebody else's clock. Goldman Sachs had a fund cycle. Motilal Oswal had return targets. Institutional capital forced a restructuring not because the business needed it, but because the investors did. Before you take outside money, ask one question: whose clock am I building against? Because that clock will eventually determine the shape of everything that follows. In 2013, the business was divided among her three sons, Ajay, Anup and Akshay. The biscuits and bakery business, which contributed 65% of total revenue, was demerged from condiments. Ajay and Anup took biscuits and bakery. Akshay took condiments. She had spent 35 years building one integrated food empire. Her sons divided it into pieces. And here's the seventh lesson, the one every founder eventually faces. Family businesses do not fracture when the founder dies. They fracture when the next generation cannot agree on what the business is supposed to become. When you divide a family business, you do not just divide assets. You divide client relationships. You divide the brand's credibility across two separate profit and loss statements. And here's the eighth and the final lesson. Succession is not an emotional event. It is a permanent valuation event. The listed entity, Mrs Bectors Food Specialities, trades publicly today. The condiments business runs separately, still carrying the Cremica name. Both are profitable, but the whole was greater than the sum of its parts. Plan the succession as carefully as you planned the founding, or it will be planned for you in a boardroom by lawyers and private equity investors on a timeline that has nothing to do with your vision. The demerger clarified the structure. In December 2020, in the middle of a pandemic, that business went public. The IPO was subscribed 198 times. It received bids for 262 crore shares against just 1.32 crore on offer. Total bids crossed rupees 40,000 crores, the highest subscription ever recorded for an IPO of rupees 200 crore or more at that time. The stock listed at a 74% premium on day one. Her husband, who passed away on December 2017 at the age of 85. He stayed chairman of Cremica Group until the very end. She described him as a constant source of guidance until his last day. Some founding stories have two founders. History sometimes only remembers one. So what was this story really about? It was about a girl who lost everything at 7 and spent the next 70 years refusing to lose anything again. She just made things so good that the world eventually had no choice but to come to her. The Honorable President of India gave her the Padma Shri in 2021, but the person she would have called first had already been gone for 3 years, and yet she survived. This is not a business story. This is what happens when you underestimate someone who had already survived the worst day of their life. It started as a nickname. Patients couldn't say his name, so they called him Doctor. 141 years later, that nickname is worth $9 billion. A doctor's recipe for cholera turned into India's largest Ayurvedic empire. 5 branches of one family, a written constitution, a rule that no family member can be employed. They handed the keys to professionals and walked away and got richer for it. The brand is everywhere, the family is nowhere. Can you guess who? Like, comment and subscribe to Personal Finance TV for the next episode of Roots. Until next time, this is me, Rohan Richard, signing off.